gives their health to the fishermen who plough the lonely sea and battle with the ocean when it's in their blood to be. Dear the fruitful bounty of the blind and savage foam, they are the last of the hunters and they're proudly sailing home. Away to the fishing ground against a flooding tide, the hunters of the wild, now the last in our time. Through living gale and storm, they sail the crystal sea they roam. They're the heart of every harbour when the boats come sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. From the mighty fleets of Yarmouth to the deep sea ships of Hull, the famous Fleetwood trawlers all have suffered from the cull. In Lossiemouth, Loch Inward, Fisher Row and Pittenweem, golden days in memory, but now are fading to dream. Quiet now the harbours where the distant echo rings, Eriskay and Scalpine, where the herring men were kings. Laden deep for Stornoway, the skipper's chain of throne. Legends of the sea, and still the ghosts are sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. A realm of strong, intrepid men and heroes of renown, a shadow of the past, traded off and torn down. The pawns of politicians' schemes lies ravaged to the bone, but still they go to sea and still the boats come sailing home. And in Newland, Plymouth, Weymouth, Poole, the Wash and Grimsby town, nor Shields and Eyemouth, Peterhead, the Brothel hold their ground. Orkney, Shetland and the Hebrides, in Oban and Kintyre, Kilkeel, the Isle of Man and Killybegs, they will not die. So we'll toast the Mallet trawlers and the creel men of the West, pelagic ships of Walsey and the sailors of Caithness, Bricks and Beamers, Cornish crabbers, and in every pier and cove we'll give a welcome at the harbour when the boats come sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home. Sailing home, sailing home, the last of the hunters sailing home.
Welcome to our listeners. Joining us in this episode, Angus MacPhail from Skipinnish. Hi, Angus.
Hello, Jim. Thanks very much for inviting me on to your podcast. It's been great listening over the last few months.
Thank you. That gives us some encouragement. If I could ask you, what did your life start with?
I was born and brought up on the island of Tiree. My father was a lobster fisherman and my mother was a school teacher. And very early years were spent a lot of time with Dad down on the pier and on the boat, and a few trips to the mainland, but mainly just on Tiree.
And where did that take you to?
Well, I spent all my school years in Tiree, and then I spent a year working in Tobermory after I left school. I was doing a bit of accordion playing in a pub called McGaughans, which had been recently opened by a group of people, one of whom was a family friend and fisherman, Alan McLean, from Tobermory, and went over to play a couple of weekends on the box and ended up staying the summer. Really enjoyed it, so got a job and ended up staying for a whole year in Tobermory. I was working on the crab boat, the Silver Star, for a while on the west side of Mull, and then the Clamdridge, or the Village Bell, for Paul Gallagher and his son Geoffrey. And then I was back playing the accordion in the pub again, as well as fishing the following summer as well. And then went off to study in Glasgow at the newly formed Scottish music course at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama.
It's interesting to hear you mention playing the accordion before you went to study music. Where did you pick that up?
Well, we were very, very lucky in Tiree. There was a school teacher there called Gordon Connell, and he had moved very soon after graduating. So he was in his early 20s. He moved to Tiree to get his first teaching job, and he began teaching kids the accordion there. And over the last 50 years, Gordon just passed away last year, sadly. But for over 50 years, Gordon taught kids in Tiree the accordion free of charge, never charged a penny for it. And it gave hundreds and hundreds of kids in Tiree the chance to learn the accordion. I was very, very lucky to be one of those kids.
Yeah, and on the fishing side, yeah, had it from good authority. You're pretty handy at the fishing.
Oh, just a part-timer, Jim. When we were brought up with it, my father had moved back to Tiree after being in the Merchant Navy for 14 years and moved back to Tiree to marry and settle down and have a family. There was no significant fishing industry at all in Tiree then, but he, from a non-fishing background, began fishing and had his first boat, Stuart's Grimacy skiff, a 25-foot skiff. I think 1969 he would have bought that. Then got a 36-foot forward wheelhouse clinker built boat built in Mackay's Stromness, the harbour maid she was called, in the 1972. He got that boat, and there are various boats in there. So we were brought up with kind of fishing background. I remember when I was at school, it must have been maybe 7 or 8 years old when Dad started doing this. He gave us 3 creels each, myself and my 3 brothers. Myself and 2 brothers, sorry. And we would haul these creels at weekends, so once a week, and we were able to keep and then land whatever lobsters we caught in these 3. I think they were 48-inch bucket parlours. So I remember saving up for my first accordion, and it was from money for the contents of these parlour creels. Wow. So it was great excitement at that age.
That's fantastic. I mean, you're getting so much out of that, because at a young age, to be earning anything you were wanting or needed, you had to earn it.
It was a great introduction to work. And then, not that long after that, I think when I was 10 and my middle brother Neil was 12, Dad gave us the use of a wee 8-foot dinghy he had. So we got 10 creels of our own. So for that summer, during the summer of 1990, so I've just turned 11, and we're hauling for green crab every hour during the day, and then shoot overnight for velvet and lobsters. That was a great summer of excitement, and again, it was great enjoyment with a lot of encouragement from Dad. It gave us a start of working for ourselves.
I believe could you almost, as far as Tiree, the island, was concerned in the community, he was a bit of a pioneer.
At that time he was. There had been a fishing industry in Tiree going back further, the late 1800s into the 1900s, but as a livelihood it had largely died out by the 50s, 60s. There was a lot of part-time fishermen, but there was nobody making a full-time living at it. He was very much of the opinion that there could be a vibrant fishing industry in Tiree. Tiree had always suffered by the lack of a natural harbour. There was no good harbour in Tiree. There was a harbour with limited shelter and limited tidal restrictions at Skipinnish, and the small harbour at Milton, where the small harbour at Curlis, called Milton Harbour, that he campaigned to get funding for to build a pier in 1972, and then the pier was extended and renovated in 1983, and the newly renovated pier just 4 years ago was extended again, and the number of boats has gone from, going back to when he started, there was only one boat working full time, and I think there's 8 boats now, employing around 20 full-time fishermen, which for an island the size of Tiree is a significant number of employees.
Absolutely. 20 people for a small community is a big employer.
And that's getting on to the HPMA threat. That's exactly the kind of jobs that would be lost overnight if these zealots got their way.
Problem there, Angus, we have the rule of thumb here, which is relevant everywhere. The 20 jobs at the fishing, we reckon there's about 6 or 7 shore jobs for every one person at sea. So you're talking about a lot more.
Yeah, there's a lot of knock-on effects, not just these 20 jobs that would be lost.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, how long is it since you've not had your dad?
Dad passed away in July 1999, so nearly 25 years since Dad passed away.
He's obviously had a big influence on the way you're talking.
Huge. I was doing an interview for the Press and Journal actually the other day about the gigs that are coming up, and they were asking me about figures that were formative in my life, and my father was foremost among those. There's not a day goes by where I don't reference his opinion or his outlook on things. So yes, a huge influence on viewpoints, and I would say I tried to be a tempered down version. I think his ways of dealing with some of the issues that we've looked at over the last year would have been a bit more, how would you put it, a bit more loud and aggressive than the way we've gone about it.
I would say, from what I know of you and what I know of, and which we'll be discussing shortly, I would have to say, Angus, I would say that man would be hugely proud of what his son has done for the fishing.
I think he would have been at the forefront of the voice against the type of people that were going to happily shut down areas like Tiree. He would have been a strong voice against that.
Yes, indeed. And going into the band, how was it formed, and where did the name come from?
Well, the band was formed, I think we were on the go for about 5 months before the name was come upon. I went to study at the RSMD when I left Tobermory, and that would have been October 1999, and one of the fellows in my course in the same year was Andrew Stevenson. I already had quite a few gigs lined up in Glasgow over that winter, and I'd met Andrew, we got on well, had a similar outlook on music, enjoyed a good scatter together, and it just seemed to happen naturally that we started doing gigs together. So we formed the band in the early part of 1999. I think by that summer we had come on the name Skipinnish. Skipinnish is the name of the croft on my mother's side of the family on the southeast part of Tiree. So it's a place name. I think it's a combination of Gaelic and Norse. So skipper, the Gaelic for ship, and nish, the Norse for point. You'll see lots of place names with nish at the end of them. It usually means a headland or a point.
Well, that's interesting. And I take it evolved from there into
something. We never had any specific plans. We just started doing gigs. The music we played seemed to go down well, and over the course of the following years, we became quite a well-known Ceilidh band at that point. And then we're doing all sorts of different things. I went back fishing after I graduated. Andrew went back working on the hill, the deer stalking. So we didn't have that much time really to put into the band. Then myself and my uncle went into partnership sea tours. So we ran trips from Tiree from 2004 up till 2011. And the band always fitted in around these things. We also started a record company in 2002. And then in 2008 we opened a music venue in Oban, and then another one in Fort William in 2011. And at various stages the band played a bigger or a smaller part in the different things we were doing at various times.
And was it just public gigs, like halls and things like that?
Yeah, in the early days, a lot of pub gigs, a lot of village halls, a lot of weddings, a lot of functions. We'd always had an inkling. At that time, it was just Ceilidh music. We're mainly a Ceilidh band. We had always had an inkling to get a proper lead singer and start doing our own material. A catalyst for that, for really getting going in that, was in 2011, December 2011. The roof blew off the top of the music venue we had in Oban. It was a kind of music venue nightclub called the Skipinnish Ceilidh House, and there was a bad gale that took the roof off. So there was a long period of wrangling to get that sorted, and during that time we thought, right, this is a good chance to put a bit more emphasis on time into the band. So we got a more solidified lineup and we were very, very lucky to have a very good singer join the band at that point, Robert Robertson. And from then on we started doing a lot more of our own material, and the popularity of the band between 2011 and I suppose now it's grown a huge amount from where we were back in the very early days of doing pub gigs and dances in village halls.
And how is it formed? Is it just I can play a fiddle and this guy can play a boxy, and is that
pretty much? I mean, it was always myself and Andrew from 99 until 2012. Or 2011, sorry, but myself and Andrew, then depending on the gig, whoever else was about. So there would maybe be 5 or 6 folk in the band, but there was no solid lineup. And there was never any set lists or rehearsals or anything like that. It was a case of just turning up. I'd be shouting the tunes as we're playing. It was very, I suppose, informal. That changed when we started getting the bigger lineup, and there was a set kind of lineup of people in the band. And then it was all folk we knew from over the years. And that's been the case when there's been people in the band, people out the band over the years. A lot of the folk that were in early years come back in and join us now and again. Archie McAllister from Campbelltown has been a fiddler really throughout. Since I think Archie did his first gig in 2001 with us, and he's still the main fiddle player in the band. So there's been people in and people out, and we're very lucky for the calibre of musicians that have joined us over the years.
And have you just a set number of people, and that's the band, or have you people you would take in for certain gigs or pieces of music?
We'll still take different guests, and a good example of that was taking Donald Francis McNeil in to join us for the Clearances Again song. DF had been a pal of ours for years, and he would never have put himself forward as a singer, but he's one of the best natural voices I've ever heard. And we were always aware of what a good singer he was. You would never see him singing in a formal sense, but you would hear him in the Castleby bar after a few pints, or the Craigard Hotel, blasting out a song in a beautiful, strong, clear voice. And it was actually DF that was the catalyst for writing that song, for having the idea of writing the song, The Clearances Again. I was sitting in the Castleby bar with him on the 8th of February last year, and we were talking about the impending doom of the HPMA legislation, and DF was talking about the islands to the south of Barra and Battersea, where he had fished all his life, and these islands are owned by the National Trust, well, Nature Scot as it is now. So joining the dots, there would be right in line for an area that would be shut And DF, I remember him talking about how much he enjoyed the early days of the summer when the weather was first good enough to shoot gear down that area. And he was talking about the abundance of bird life and just the feeling of when he was hauling in close on the cliffs and the thousands and thousands of birds just up above, and the feeling and the connection with the environment. And I remember thinking at the time, is that not just ridiculous that a man who had fished that area all his life, whose people had fished that area all his life, could be put out of business by the sweep of a pen by a civil servant in Edinburgh? And I remember DF's words, you'll maybe have to edit this out, but I remember him saying, if the government shut down these islands where DF was fishing, that's his main summer fishing ground, DF said, if they shut that down, we're fucked. We're out the game. And the injustice of that, to me, was powerful. And I remember saying to DF that night, I said, I wonder if I could write a song about this. And it kind of mulled around. I was fishing full time then, and I, over various kind of weeks ahead out in the boat, I remember thinking, I wonder, how could I go about getting this articulated into a song? And then in the middle of that, there was the consultation, the online consultations on the consultation. And I attended one of these online consultations, and I had been guilty, like many fishermen, of being totally blindsided by this legislation that was coming in that looked like it could shut down whole areas of fishing grounds. They weren't talking about where they were going to shut down, but it was going to be a lottery. And I can't remember who was all on that meeting. And I remember sitting dumbfounded by the attitude of, there was a couple of civil servants on the meeting, and they were talking just nonchalantly about areas being shut. And I remember there was a young fellow from somewhere south of Oban asked what the situation would be with people who would be put out of business. He asked, would there be any compensation? And it was a very kind of flippant answer. No, there would just be a readjustment of, the people would like to encourage tourism businesses, and possibly, boats will move to other areas. Just like that. You'll go out of business and you'll maybe do something else. As if, no problems. And at that point, I hadn't read that much into what was all involved, but I was absolutely aghast by the attitude, and also it really struck me how broad brush blanket across everything. It wasn't just fishing that was going to be stopped. It could be windsurfing, it could be kite surfing, it could be canoeing. I think there was somewhere in the language it said, in certain circumstances you'll be able to go wild swimming, and just absolutely ridiculous. So following that, again, that was kind of going round in my head. And I remember I was in a train from Amsterdam to Luxembourg on the 10th of March, and it was 7 a.m. We had been doing gigs, and I thought, right, I'm going to. So the brain was feeling active. I was feeling creative. So I started writing a song. I found a carriage that was empty, took the box out, started writing the song, and I thought, right, I'm going to write it from DF's perspective, because he represented somebody who was a very low impact operator. He had been fishing that area all his life from Battersea, and he would have been put out of business overnight had that legislation hit. So I sent DF. I wrote the song pretty quickly, but I'd been boiling away over the past few months while out on the boat fishing, and the past few weeks, out on the boat fishing, and then following that Zoom meeting. So I sent DF a tentative message saying, is there any chance that you would be the man that would actually sing this song? And he came back saying a whole string of swear words, but he eventually agreed to do it. I don't think there's any other circumstance that DF would have sung that song, or any song in such a public context, had he not felt so strongly about the issue. So he agreed to sing it, and we very, very rushed, in a very rushed sense. We got the song finished, got it recorded, got the video done, and we knew we had to get it out before the end of the consultation period. Because at that point, the public knew very, very little about what was happening. Even as fishermen, we knew very little. And I mean, Duncan McInnes was, I think, he told us at a meeting back end of 2022 about this Butte House agreement, and that one of the aspects of that Butte House agreement was, I say, highly protected marine areas. But we didn't spend too much time looking into it or finding anything more about it. But I do remember Duncan saying at that meeting in North Bay Hall that this was the biggest threat to the population of the Western Isles that he was aware of in his lifetime. And I remember that I did think, if a man like Duncan McInnes is saying that, then we should take heed. But, you know, life gets in the way, you're busy trying to make a living, so I didn't look any more into it after that initial meeting with Duncan. So there was this period of the impending doom, but nobody really being that aware of what was happening, and certainly among the general public. So we felt we had to get the word out to the general public, and we were very, very lucky that we had the platform of the band to do it. And it was a total unknown at the time whether it would have any impact. Politicians were saying, look, this is happening regardless of what people think. That was the general message, that, you know, this is set in stone, this agreement, 10% of Scottish waters is going to be shut. So it was a total shot in the dark, and from a standpoint of, I suppose, desperation. There was no feeling that there was a good chance that this would work. It was what else can we do? And we're very lucky that the public seemed to connect with the song and the message, and it was a part among many other parts that led to the dropping of the legislation. But I think it did play its part.
It certainly did. And were you not aware beforehand of the impact it would have on the industry?
No, not at all. I remember, as I say, I was fishing full time at that time, and I remember thinking, because of the timing of it, there was a real rush to get it done, and we knew it had to be done, recorded to a high quality, and we knew the video had to be done to a high quality. So we had to really put the time in to get it recorded, to get the video produced, get it out. Now, I took about 2 weeks off fishing at that point. I remember thinking, that first recording, I think it cost, just an actual cost, I think it was about 25,000. Plus, I took 2 weeks off fishing. And I remember thinking, this is absolute madness. This could do absolutely no good. And I've just thrown a whole load of my time and money down the drain. And we were very lucky that some of that cost was covered by sponsors, but there wasn't really time to organise it properly. So it was a pretty big shot in the dark, and it was an unknown whether it would have any positive impact. And it was the other thing that was a significant worry at the time. We're not a political band at all. There's no political affiliation in the band. Everyone's got their own views politically. Some people vote for one party, some people vote for another party within the band. And I was very aware that I didn't want to drag the band down a political route, but I felt absolutely compelled to try and do something against this absolutely catastrophic injustice against the very culture where our music has derived from. But I didn't want to have a negative impact on the other guys in the band. There's a very fine line of being too political as a band, and it would be unfair for me to put my desires and needs ahead of the other folk in the band. But they were very, very understanding, and they were totally on board with the campaign. But again, it was an unknown. It was a massive risk to take. There's thousands and thousands of environmentalists in the world. There's absolutely no doubt that we lost a lot of fans because we took part in this campaign. And I would do it again, absolutely 100%. But at the time, it was a worry that this could do no good. We could be spending a lot of money and losing a whole load of fans. It was a fairly nervous time.
It's really interesting hearing you say that now, Angus. And did you actually feel that you were writing a song, you were singing a song with a message, but from what you say there, you were actually joining a campaign? Is that the way you felt?
I suppose yes. It was a campaign to bring attention to the public of the absolutely catastrophic effects that this legislation would have on coastal areas.
Just admirable to hear you say that. And it really interesting earlier in your conversation when you mentioned Duncan McInnes. Now, I know Duncan very well. And from what you say there, no, you're saying about round Tyree yourself, going from what maybe Duncan said, that could have had the same catastrophic offence throughout the whole Western Isles.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really annoyed me during all the debate about it, if you said to somebody, that this is an absolutely terrible thing that's going to happen, the response from the kind of civil servant government side would be, no, we haven't made any plans yet. 10% of the area they were talking about is a huge amount of sea. And it was hanging over all of our heads. It could have been Tyree, it could have been Barra, it could have been Mingley, it could have been the west side of Harris, it could have been whatever area around Skye, south of Oban. Who knew where it was going to be, but it was going to be somewhere. So, yeah, everybody was in the same boat. Everybody was in the firing line.
And as we know, the environmental groups, well, for one, as far as the government were concerned, they were talking about a 10%. Nobody knew exactly where that was. And going by typical environmental groups, they wouldn't stop there. They never stop.
No, it would have been the side of a very significant wedge. And I mean, it still is. I don't believe for a minute that the legislation has been forgotten about. It'll undoubtedly come back in different names, different forms, different guises.
I think it's already just a name change, and it's not gone away. But you mentioned earlier that the area you were talking about initially owned by Nature Scott. Well, as Kenneth McNabb mentioned in a previous podcast, they're on the side of the environmentalists.
Yeah, I mean, listen to people like Kenneth McNabb.
They're government advisors, but they're very one-sided.
Yeah, it certainly appear that way. I'm not as knowledgeable of these things as people like Kenny are, but that appears to be the case.
Yeah, which is quite concerning, very concerning from a fisherman's point of view. And would you say that it's affected the confidence in fishermen?
Hugely. And no wonder if you're a young fella deciding your career path and you've spent the last year being aware that on the turn of a card in Bute House and the sweep of a pen by a civil servant, the potential industry that you're going into could be shut down overnight. That's going to make you think twice about buying a fishing boat or think twice about getting a job on a fishing boat. If you're 16, 17, 18 years old and you're deciding, maybe I'll go fishing, or maybe I'll go to university, or maybe I'll get a job with Calmac or a fish farm. The fact that you could go into an industry that could be shut down overnight would make you think twice. It would also make a bank manager think twice about giving you a loan for a boat.
That's exactly what I was going to say just now. It would certainly give concern to a bank and whether...
I mean, the market for take your own boat. I knew that I'd be stopping fishing over kind of at this time last year. So we put the boat up for sale. We'd done a major refit on it, with new engine, new gearbox, new fuel tanks, new electrics, huge amount of work. Now, 3-4 years ago, we could have put that boat on for sale and it would have been snapped up overnight for well north of 210, 220,000. We put it on north of 200, no interest, took the price down, eventually took it down as far as 160, not much interest. Now, that's a sign of confidence, totally knocked out an industry. I mean, there's boats sitting in the market there that 2, 3, 4 years ago would have been away within a couple of weeks, and there's just nothing moving. And it's not just the HPMA threat and whatever comes after it, it's MCA, increased legislation, the whole medical debacle, and various other things. But a huge part of that is the threat that areas can be shut down overnight. And it's one of the most frustrating things about the whole situation. It's not for that confidence being out the industry. It's not for lack of good fishing, and it's not for lack of a good market. The fishing for the product is good just now, and the market for the product is good. But because of all these other contributing factors, particularly that threat that your area could be shut down off the back of environmental campaign groups having the ear of politicians, as we saw with HPMA threats, then it's a huge off-putter to people going into the industry.
Yeah, and that situation you were saying about trying to sell the boat, starting over 200,000 and you're now down less than 160.
Well, we took it off the market. I mean, it's quite a good situation. The fellow that I own the boat with is fishing it again. We're in a lucky position when there's not too much pressure either way, but there's a lot of people that are not in that lucky position that various pressures. But the biggest negative impact is stopping young people going into the industry because of that lack of confidence in the future. And no wonder that exists with the way that politicians have treated the industry over the last number of years.
Well, that's only one part of it, because for every fisherman that isn't able to take part in it, it's ruining a coastal community.
Exactly. It's one of the biggest potential positive parts of life in coastal areas, both in lifestyle and in economy. And it's been kicked and kicked and kicked to suit the wants, needs and desires of a very narrow group of passionate campaigners.
Yeah, I can see what would be driving you, going back to your father, and he's obviously done so much, because you said he was the first fisherman in your area, but he was instrumental in increasing that, and also the new pier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that new pier that was finished in 2019 there, over £1 million of community investment, never mind the private investment of the fishermen and their boats there, wiped out overnight if Tiree had been covered by the HPMA area. And that's not just now, that's for generations into the future. It's a frustrating situation that can be a possibility.
And I mean, the government are talking about 30%. They're committed to protecting and effectively managing by 30%. Well, how do they manage? How do they work out 30% of biodiversity?
Mm-hmm. There's so many grey areas, and that's the other thing. When I was watching a video, must have been the back end of last year. It was one of these pro Arran Coast videos, and the amount of disinformation and maligning of areas and maligning of fishermen, it's quite incredible. And also, I would love to know what their method of knowing how many lobsters are in an area. There was somebody on the video saying there's 3 to 4 times the number of lobsters now in the no-take zone compared to other areas. How do they know? I would love to get in there with a few creels and see how the fishing is and how they monitor lobster numbers. Lobsters are very elusive creatures. You can fish an area 1 week and catch 1 or 2 lobsters, fish exactly the same area the week after and catch 5 times that number of lobsters. It's not that they're not there, they're just not eating.
That's right.
And to say categorically in a promotional video that there's 3 to 4 times the number of lobsters in this area now that they're compared to other areas, how on earth do they know? I'm all for fisheries science and research, but I think there needs to be a bit more truth in just how wide the margins for error are in these types of studies.
Well, I totally agree with that. And the thing that I find almost insulting, well, it is insulting, is how when they come with figures like that, which they have absolutely no way of backing it up. But also, as you know yourself, and you're maybe even members of it, we have organisations now like the SFF, Scottish Fishermen's Federation, SWFPA, Scottish Whitefish Producers Association, headed by the like Elspeth MacDonald in the SFF, Mike Park. But speak to them, and they've all got their own scientists in their organisation, their own scientists. It's not like they're just trying to see how much they can get for their members. They're taking a very responsible approach.
Yeah, I mean, and listening to your podcasts of folk like Mike Park, it bodes well for the future because these guys are so clued up on the science and the complexities of the industry. I think there's a quote in another one of your guests, a quote in John Goodlad's book that says a complicated truth is more difficult to convince people of than a simple lie. And there's a lot of simple lies been told by these campaign groups.
Yeah.
Like there's 3 to 4 times the number of lobsters in the no-take zone compared to other areas.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But another point I often make, Angus, is I'm 75 now in September. I've been in the fishing industry all my life. My father was a fisherman. I have never in my life met a fisherman that goes out to sea with the intentions of catching the last of any species.
No, absolutely not. It's in everybody's interest to look after the ocean. And it's a very important part of the whole debate is that marine management is absolutely essential. But the weather can't be dictated by the extremists on the environmentalist front. It's one of the most toxic atmospheres of any industry I've ever been aware of. It's just the mismatch of campaigning zealots against people who are genuinely wanting to do their job and look after the environment that they're working in and create a good future for that industry.
You're certainly right with your description, extremists, because that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
They'll not stop at anything.
I wouldn't have thought so. It's not an area of life that I was that aware of until the HPMA debacle. But it's quite frightening, and listen to people like Kenny McNabb talking about the funding streams they've got. I mean, fishermen can't compete with that. I mean, these organisations have got funding for full-time jobs, for U-boats, for studies, for campaigns, for videos like that Aaron Coase video with full of downright lies. It's frightening the mismatch. We're just a small band. We certainly couldn't afford to do what we did last year again for a good number of years. It feels like a very David and Goliath situation with a huge funding that the groups like that have got.
Well, funny enough, I think it's very much in my mind just now here, even in our community in Caithness, and probably you could broaden that by saying the North Highlands. It's almost like the Clearances again, just the name of your song. That's and this is not me giving my opinion. The feeling of the local people just now here, Angus, is they're quite happy to see. We have a depopulation of over 20%, and it's the last people you want to leave, young people who don't see a future. And the feeling is they just want to put wind farms and things. It's all about renewables, and they're quite happy to see the people go.
Yeah, my brother has fished since he was 19. Lives in Tiree. He's got a young family, three kids under 7. He had a brand new boat, a Typhoon 33, finished last April, and that's been his whole working life. Knowledge passed down from Dad, a lifetime of hard work, a lifetime of investment, a lifetime of learning his trade, a lifetime of looking after the fishing grounds that he works, a lifetime of providing employment for other people, and taking a big step for a small fishing community like Tiree. I mean, that boat would have, I don't know the exact figures, but it would have been something around of $500,000 investment for the new boat. Doing it in such a way to be able to keep his existing boat and have a skipper fishing that. And overnight, these guys would have been happy to put him out of business and nonchalantly say, well, could you why don't you do dolphin watching instead?
Yeah.
Or why don't you move to Glasgow and become a bus driver? As if it means absolutely nothing.
No interest in the community and that.
No interest in the damage. The 20-odd folk that work on the boats in Tiree, their kids make up 25% of those under 8 on the island. Every one of these kids under 8 goes to the Gaelic medium school. So it's not just economy, it's language, it's culture, it's identity that would be getting wiped out overnight.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally. And I'll go deeper than that, Angus. The reason I say I get it is because I'm from a small fishing village called Helmsdale, and there's never been more than about 700, maybe 800 maximum population in Helmsdale. Here's a statistic which you'll maybe find a wee bit frightening, or a big bit frightening. I had a recent conversation with a good friend of mine from here. I'm sure you'll know him, Andrew Bremner.
Oh, yes.
Well-renowned, respected fisherman. Now, it goes back, his father, Norrie Bremner, was a big name in the fishing. We're having a conversation. I was telling him, by the time I got married and I left Helmsdale, there was 9 sea-net boats in Helmsdale. Now, that's a population of just over 700 then. 9 sea-net boats. And do you know what his response to that was? That's 9 sea-net boats in Helmsdale. He says, there's 8 now in Scotland. So that's how the effect it's having on fishing. Have you had any sort of approach from the environmental groups since your song?
Well, funnily enough, and I mean, I was kind of taken aback with this. I think it was within 1 day of the song going out, I was contacted by somebody from a group called Open Seas, which you'll be aware of. In my ignorance, and not knowing much about this area at the time, I'd never heard of them. But this fellow phoned me up from Open Seas. Very, very nice, very, very charming guy, telling me how much he liked the song, and it became pretty clear. I think he was very keen to find out what my thoughts were on mobile gear. And I think it's one of the things that we need to be very, very aware of as fishermen, is the divide and conquer tactics. I think he was hoping that I would say, yes, we don't like scallop dredgers and we hate prawn trawlers, but I very, very quickly said I'll be saying nothing negative about clammers or trawlers. So if you think you're going to take me down that path, you can think again. Yeah, of course, there's a good bit of argy-bargy at different places at different times between mobile gear and static gear, but I very, very much think we all need to stick together. Yeah, within a day of the song coming out, there's a fella was in contact with me. Reading between the lines, there was an expectation that I would be anti-mobile gear, which I very much amn't.
Well, I would say well done you for sussing him out, because they're having that same organisation, that it's shocking the way they're going about trying to. They can't stop the fishing yet, so they're attacking the market.
Yeah, it's a worrying situation to be in. These groups, they're well organised, they're well funded, they've got full-time employees, and give them their due, they're clever, passionate people, and they're good operators. Talking of maligning and, I suppose, spin and outright lies, there was a post on the Open Seas Facebook page last year talking about the amount of... You'll be aware that there's a closed area known as Broad Bay up in Lewis, and there's debate about whether this area being closed has done any good, in fact, for stock. And Open Seas were obviously wanting to make the point that this had a good effect on the fishing. And they had a statistic that I can't remember exactly, but it was something like there have been 30,000 tonnes of prawns landed from this area in a certain period of time. And according to people up there, there's no prawn ground in that area, and there wouldn't be 1 tonne of prawns landed from that area. But the statistics they'd taken were from landings to a harbour within that area, not from actual fish or prawns caught in that area. But they were quite willing to put these statistics out, knowing that they were false and knowing that the general public wouldn't know the difference. But
Sure.
absolute lies. Absolute lies.
It's just despicable, really.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a good ear to government, and they swallow it. They go with it. Going back to the HPMAs, that was the Greens. I mean, it wasn't on the SNP manifesto, so that was born by the Greens. But
yeah, I mean, the worrying thing is that it's across all political parties. Again, I was unaware of this previous to the HPMA situation, but apparently this was in all the parties' manifestos to some degree. So the worrying thing for me is not the political parties; it's the campaign groups that have got the ear and are putting the pressure on the political parties. And then, of course, when the reins of power are given to folk like Ariane Burgess and Lorna Slater, then tiny communities like the fishing communities we're talking about are at risk of being shut down by these people who see fishing as bad and want to stop it.
yeah, it's just outrageous. It's ways of life. It goes back in history. It's, as you say, it's not going away. It's changing names, and it's so really dishonest. And
And another one of the astounding aspects of the whole thing is these people are genuinely surprised that people were angry, that communities were objecting to this, which just shows such an ignorance of what's going on in the ground on their part.
But I think, feel it's maybe just they're so used to getting their own way.
I'm not sure. I mean, there's one thing for sure, though, is that it displays absolute ignorance of genuine situation in coastal communities.
Yeah. Going back to Skipinnish, are you fishing just now? Or are you...
No, I stopped fishing in September last year. I had only gone back fishing when all our gigs were cancelled during COVID. I had a hankering to go back fishing for many years, never having thought I would get the chance to do it. But then with all the gigs being cancelled with COVID, I was never going to get a better opportunity. So yeah, I was very lucky to go into partnership with a good friend of mine, Donald MacLeod. Coppertop was his known up in Barra. So bought the boat and pretty much moved up to Barra for most of that 3-year period. But with gigs being back on and a lot of the recording stuff needing to get done, it just wasn't feasible to keep fishing. I was hoping to be able to combine the two, but fishing's not a job you can do half-hearted. You need to be going at it properly. So it just wasn't feasible with what was needed with the band and with various other things with my wife's work and different complications of life. So no, I've not fished since September last year, but the boat's back fishing again. Donald's fishing it again, which is a good outcome. So I'm hoping once we get these 25th anniversary gigs out the way, I'm hoping to get up to Barra for a wee while later on in the summer to get back for a wee bit of fishing again.
So I was just going to come to that, because so your wife will be proud to be married to the boy in the band.
Well, she's not a big Scottish music fan. She's actually from Warsaw in Poland, but she enjoys the gigs.
So I was just thinking, I was going to come to the 25th, and it must be the 25th anniversary, because you just mentioned about starting in 99, and I thought, well, so have you things organised to celebrate the 25th?
We've got two gigs just next month, actually. The first one in Buck Park, Inverness, on the 6th of July. That'll be the first of the two main 25th anniversary gigs, and then we've got Edinburgh Castle on the 12th of July. So we're looking forward to doing a few fishing related songs at these gigs.
You'll have a good ear to if you're at Edinburgh Castle. They might just hear you in Holyrood.
Well, aye, if there'll be 8,500 folk hopefully singing along with the clearances again at Edinburgh Castle. So hopefully the sound will ricochet down the Royal Mile to Holyrood.
And am I right in saying that if they're not already a sellout, they're pretty close to it?
They're pretty near. The Edinburgh one's just nearly there. So hopefully by the next few weeks it'll be sold out.
Well, does that not give you comfort that the environmentalists have not won?
Well, it might be sold out already if we didn't lose a few of them last year. But I certainly wouldn't turn the clock back and change it. Probably one of the high points of the last 25 years actually was the privilege to be part of that campaign, and without a doubt the issue hasn't gone away, but it was a small success, and I'm very glad that we were able to play a small part in that. There was certainly a hell of a lot of hard work and nitty-gritty work being done behind the scenes, and we only played a small part in the outcome, but I was very, very glad we did play that small part.
Oh, Angus, please do yourself a favour. Take out the small. You had a major part in that. And it might sound a bit much coming from a almost 75-year-old, but I can tell you with all sincerity, still, how long has that been out? Over a year?
Just over a year, yes.
Just over a year. I can't yet watch the video, listen to the song without welling up.
Well, that's a powerful statement coming from somebody like yourself, and that if people like you are saying things like that, and it's connected with people like you, then as a songwriter, it's a wonderful feeling. So thank you very much, Jim.
I say that, Angus, with all sincerity. And environmentalists might be listening to this and thinking I'm being a bit childish or sappy or whatever. As I said, I don't take anything back from what I say. I say it with all sincerity. I think it's so powerful. And since we've got similarities when we talk about our dad. You even mentioned, I think you mentioned in our conversation, when you go back before the war, when your dad was fishing. And it just took me back because I think one of the most powerful stories I feel and tell about my background and at my father's era, he was a fisherman all his life. And there's 5 brothers. 5 of them volunteered to join the Navy during the war.
Mm-hmm.
5 of them come home. And they bought a...
Very unusual at that during that period.
And they bought a fishing boat when they come back and started sea netting. And a cousin of mine, Davy, who's older than me, he's well in his 80s now, and I ask him, it must have been such a fantastic atmosphere and buzz. Helmsdale must have been such a great place to be in, just after the war, people coming home and just going to sea. It was, so everything you say and your song says, it just takes me back through my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's much appreciated that you've said that, Jim. It's, when you're writing songs, it's always an unknown whether they're going to connect with people. But if folk like yourself are having that feeling about them, then it's a good sign the song has connected.
Totally. How can people find out about your gigs online?
If they just go to the Skipinnish website, all the gigs are on there, or the Skipinnish Facebook page as well. All the information's on there as well.
That's fantastic. If I could just fire a question at you going back to the fishing. You're having a special meal at home. Seafood. I take it would be seafood. What would it be?
Well, that's an easy question for me. Well, how many items of seafood am I allowed?
You tell me your favourite and what your choice would be. There's no limit.
Crab claws, scallops, and lobster tail. Out of the crab claws mixed with just a wee bit of mayonnaise, squeeze a lemon, on either good homemade bread or Carswater biscuits. That's my go-to base for crab claw. Fried scallops and butter, just a tiny bit of garlic, and just lobster tail dipped in a bit of mayonnaise. That's my three favourite foods, bar none: the crab claw, scallops, and the lobster tail. And just given what we're talking about earlier on, I'm going to add a good big prawn tail in there as well, so a good bit of scampi.
When you says a good bit, I thought you were going to come with a nice dry white wine or something like that. That would be a good addition. It's such a big. It's so popular. It's such a big market. There's such a demand for it, and it's a top food.
That's a lot. I mean, it's a very relevant aspect of the whole thing. Talking about in the context of the environmental movement, it's one of the most sustainable, healthy, environmentally friendly products to consume. There's a cracking bit at the end of John Goodlad's book about the low carbon footprint of seafood, and it's something that I didn't really give it that much thought to over the years. But there's compared to, it's such a hot topic just now, the carbon footprint of food production, and it's a massive positive of the seafood industry. It's the low carbon footprint of shellfish, of particularly herring and mackerel, with very, very low carbon footprint. So it's a huge positive aspect of the seafood industry that the general public need to be more aware of.
Oh, totally. I've got a really interesting podcast coming up shortly next week with a woman from Aberdeen University, and she's a expert on the nutritional values of seafood.
Mm-hmm. Oh, my own wife's actually a nutritionist, and she's always talking about how healthy, nutritious that seafood is. So not only does it taste amazing, it's environmentally friendly, and by God, it's good for you as well.
Yeah, totally. Ticks every box. Angus, I would just like to thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
It's been a great chat. I hope you can edit the ramblings to make me.
I'll not be editing I don't recall any ramblings, and I can't be thinking of there's anything I'm wanting to edit. So thank you so much, and good luck with your 25-year anniversary gigs.
Well, it's been great speaking to you, Jim. Thank you.
And the shores of the sand are sound, and the glow of a boat well laden, steaming north when you're homeward bound. Donald Francis MacPhail is my name. I am a fisherman through to the bone. I have lived by the creel and the wave to provide for our family and home. Generations before me have followed the tide and the call of the seas, but the soul will be torn from our future, and the heart from the Hebrides. Farewell to the cliffs of Mingley, and the shores of the Sandra Sound, and the glow of a boat well laden, steaming off on your home. I have walked through the stacks and the arches, and learned from the old in my youth. 10,000 seabirds my chorus, the sea is my way and my truth. At one with the ocean, with nature, the world above and below. The harvest of harmony circle, but my life and my living must go. For the passions of urban ideals, where the passions of ignorance play, to the lies of political deals, no care for the lives in their way. Farewell to the cliffs of Ligoley, and the shores of the sandry sound, and the glow of a boat well laden, skimming north when you're homeward bound. My people, my language, my island, and the rights that our forefathers won, to remain on the soil of our homeland, by the sweep of a pen well begun. A wrecking ball through our existence, tradition and culture condemned, at the hands of the arrogant stranger, the clearance is over again. Farewell to the cliffs of Mayonnaise, and the shores of the sand sound, and the glow of a boat well laden, steaming north when you're homeward bound. But we'll join with the king of our coastline, from Ness to the Holy Isle. Faceless grey soot from the cities, they will not play games with our lives. My song marks a fight for survival, a Mayday call we cry. We will stand for the rights of our children, we will not let our islands die. Farewell to the cliffs of Ligoley, and the shores of the sandry sound, and the glow of a boat well laden, steaming north when you're homeward bound. Farewell to the cliffs of Mayonnaise, and the shores of the sandry sound, and the glow